Hi. So, even if this video starts, as most of my videos usually do, I will be actually trying out something new on this one. And as you can see, I finished my Mortise station and I can actually call it a Mortise station. But even if it is a new tool for the shop, this isn't something new that I was talking about. On the previous projects, I've shared some of my design process and the fact that I can't draw at all, which is kind of painful when I'm trying to do a design. That's why I've been trying to get into 3D designing a bit, and I've been using Fusion 360 to do that. And no, this isn't a sponsored video. I tried SketchUp, but I preferred Fusion 360 over that one, so that's why I went with that. This isn't a project where I would say that I would definitely need to use a CAD program to do the designing, but it made the process a whole lot easier. It was easier to iterate between different design choices and to see how a small change would affect the big picture. The main reason I've been trying to get into 3D designing is that I have some built-in cabinets that I need to build at our house at some point, and for other bigger projects it makes the process a bit easier. I can make these cut lists on all the parts that I need, and like I said, I don't really know how to draw, so this is way easier for me. Even if this is a big change on my normal ways of working, this isn't the only new thing that I'm going to try with this project, but more on that bit later. Now that I start having all my rough cut pieces planed and ready for the project, I can begin the first glue up, which is making the 3 shelves for the project. As I'm working on the project on evenings and weekends, I didn't do all the steps on one day, and now that I had to start the glue ups, I actually had to first figure out which boards I would use for the panels. So to not forget things like this, I think I should start labeling the pieces so I would remember which board I'm planning to use for what when I come back after a couple of days. So, like I said before, I will be making 3 shelves, so I need to glue up 3 panels, which isn't that big of a deal since it will be only 2 boards for each panel, so it's quite easy to do. Even though it's only 2 boards, I still went through my whole normal process when I'm gluing up panels. First, making sure that I'm alternating the grains so the panels stay straight even after some time, and also marking the edges with I's and O's so I can have a final go through at the jointer to make sure that I can get as flat panels as I possibly can. As someone whose day job is sitting at a computer for most of the days, I don't really like working on the computer after that. But learning how to use the 3D programming has been quite nice because it makes the working process of making these projects a bit easier. And I can feel that I can be a bit more confident on the fact that I would like the design before I start building it because I've gone through different iterations of the design before actually starting it. Another thing that I have to use the computer for outside of my work is making these videos. And I would appreciate if you would leave a like to the video if you are enjoying it and subscribe the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Another nice thing of having such small panels is that I can run them through my planer, which I can do most of the time because usually the panels that I'm gluing up are wider than my 10-inch planer. After ripping them to the correct size, I went back and used my new tool, the miter saw. I could have cut the panels to length on the table saw, but I thought that I'd give it a go on the miter saw now that I have one. I think that the cut quality wasn't as good as I have on my table saw, but that's a problem that's easy to fix with a new blade that has a bit more teeth on it. As my miter saw isn't the flagship product from Makita, it doesn't have the laser sight in it, but it has these LED lights which then create a shadow from the blade, so it's easy enough to see where the cut line would be. And now that I had the panels cut to size, it was time to start cutting some pieces for the other parts of the project. First, cutting some strips that would be the vertical pieces that connect the shelves to one another. Then cutting the even thinner ones that would be the supports for the shelves. To cut these pieces to length, I did that on the table saw because most of these are quite short, so it's easy enough to do with the sled and a stop block. As some of you might be wondering, as I mentioned earlier, that I will be trying something new on the project outside the design process. We are just about to get there, and that's with the joinery on this project. If you have been watching a lot of my videos or even just the latest video on the chair that I made, you know that I don't have Festool domino and I mostly just use dowels to do the joinery on my work. I thought that since this is a rather simple project and something small-ish that I'm working on, I thought that I'd try something new outside of the dowels on this one. As some prep work for the joinery, I did some sanding on the pieces so the dimensions wouldn't change that much after I've done all the joinery. Finally to the joinery. So I will be trying Mortise and Tenon joints on this one, hooking up the frame pieces which hold the shelves to each other with Mortise and Tenon joints rather than using dowels as I usually do. I did some background on this and it's easier to do the mortises first as it's easier to fine tune the tenons to fit the mortises later on. So I begin by marking down where each mortise would need to be. After drilling most of the material off with the Forstner bit, I then went and did some chiseling to square out the edges for the mortise. When I started doing this, I kind of realized that this might take a while since I have a total of 8 of these pieces that will hold the shelves and 8 times 2 makes it 16, so I would have 16 mortises to chisel out. But after I got into the rhythm, it actually didn't take that long to do each of these. And it was actually kind of nice to work with the hand tools, not to have all the noise from the machinery, just listening some music and chiseling out. As all the mortises were cut out, it was time to go back to the machinery and get some different kind of noise for the background. So I decided that I will cut the tenons on the table saw using the crosscut sled because that's the easiest and most reliable way for me to cut these so that they would all be the same size. After some fine tuning on the tenons, I was able to get the size correctly so I could fit these into the mortises. I specifically wanted to go with this type of mortise and tenon rather than going with through tenons because these will not be visible, so it didn't matter if the fit isn't perfect as it would not be visible as it would be with a through tenon. I think that if we would make this shelf from a black walnut and make it with through tenons and have some accenting splines on the tenons, let's say some maple, it would look really cool. Next I had to go back to the shelves and cut some slots for the frames so I would have the shelves sitting almost flush with the wall rather than having this 2 centimeter about an inch gap between the wall and the back end of the shelf. I tried to figure out what would be the easiest way to cut these slots on the shelves. I think the ends would be easy enough to cut on the table saw, but the ones in the middle are a bit more trickier, so I decided that I'll just cut these with the hand saw, make some cuts, and then I can just chip out the material that I want to get off. I think you could do this with a router and with a good base that would stay flat on top of the shelves and just routing out the material that you want to get rid of. But I don't think router gives you the same satisfaction as this does when you chip out the pieces with a chisel. I think you could make some good ASMR content from that as well. Before the glue up, I had one more step to do, and that's drilling some holes on the pieces. One set of holes so I could attach the shelf on the wall where it will go eventually, and another one is to drill some holes for the screws, which I will be using for attaching the shelves to the frame pieces. So again, drilling some holes halfway through with the Forstner bit, and then taking another normal drill bit and drilling a hole all the way through the pieces. On the smaller pieces that I will be attaching the shelves to, I made sure that the hole is a bit oversized compared to the screws that I will be using, so that will allow some seasonal movement on the shelves. Next, it was time to do the glue up of the frames, and having the Mortise and Tenon joints made the glue up rather easy because you really didn't have to prep anything, you just put some glue into the mortises, just made sure that all the pieces that are holding the shelves are facing the right direction as they have the holes in them now, and that's about it. As I have all the pieces already sanded, I made sure to clean any glue squeeze up so I wouldn't have any glue left on them after. And I think that's technically a lie, as I didn't really have all the pieces sanded. I still had to sand all the shelves, which I did while I was waiting for the glue to dry. Next it was time to do a dry assembly to see how this whole thing looked for the first time assembled outside of the computer screen, and also to mark down the locations for the screws so I could drill some pilot holes on the shelves. I tried to mark down the couple of first holes with the drill bit, but I just ended up using the pencil that I have because that's a whole lot easier than trying to do it with this. Once I had all the pilot holes drilled, I had one more step to do before applying the finish, and that was adding my Maker's brand on one of the shelves. As I mentioned last time that I'm interested on the Maker's medallions, I actually found out that you can probably do those yourself if you have a laser, and that's something that I've been looking into getting, a small laser and a small 3D printer to make some small things, jigs and stuff like that. For the finish, I again used Rubio Monocoat Mist 5%, the same that I used on the dining table and the chair, because I still have some left over from those projects, and I think it fits very nicely on the color scheme that we have in the bedroom. And even though Rubio is quite expensive, I think I still have enough from that bottle for 1 or 2 projects, depending on what I do, so I think it lasts quite nicely. Once I had all the shelves screwed onto the frames, I had only one thing left, and that's mounting the shelf on the wall, and then the project would be done. I think the project turned out really nice, and I especially liked the design process that I had on this one, because if I had went and did it with the first idea that I had, I don't think I would have liked it that much. So it was really nice that it was easy and simple to kind of iterate the different small details with the computer rather than trying to figure this out in your head or try to draw them. As I've mentioned, I don't know really how to draw, but if you are a good drawer, I think you can still do it like that. But overall, really nice small project and a nice and easy way to learn some new things both at the computer and in the workshop. Anyone interested in interior designing, don't worry, we've left a place for small plant on the most bottom shelf that we will be adding once we go to the shop and buy one. If you've made it this far into the video, Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.